Hi, I'm Ali Livingston and I'm the founder of Paths Through Change. Today I'll be talking about that first conversation that you have with your child or children when you first tell them that you are going to separate from their other parent, or when you and their other parent tell them together. It is a topic where I see lots of parents looking for support and guidance and answers and solutions. And it's a time, I think, that parents look to external sources of information to help them with this conversation. So I hope that this will give you some confidence about how to go into that conversation, but also remove some of the pressure and make you a little bit less worried about it. So, firstly, when thinking about that initial conversation, I will try and remove some of the pressure on it. I know that the first time those words leave your mouth, it's going to feel like a huge shift, a huge moment for you. But I do want you to be thinking about the fact that your child may not receive it in the same way. It's best, I think, to think about this information that you're sharing with them being delivered to them over a series of conversations, and also in a more of a question and answer format, rather than one big monologue from you where you tell them everything they need to know in a perfect way. And I think that idea of there being a perfect way is irresistible. It's a incredibly lovely idea that if we are able to tell our children this news using particular words, phrases, avoiding particular things, then our child will have a response that feels kindest and most loving to them. But I think this pursuit of a perfect script and of particular way in which to deliver the information to them can actually be a way that we as parents drive ourselves up the bend. I think at this time of parenting particularly, we are sold the idea that there is a right way to do things, and if we put in enough time and enough effort, then we can find that way. So on that point, I think that we need to remove the idea that there is any one right way to do this, and that this probably isn't going to be one conversation, and then turn to 3 things that we can do if you are someone who likes having sort of guidance and ideas running in your head when you're sort of going into a conversation like this. These are some things that you can hold on to, but I do want it to be in the context that these aren't ideas that you have to do, and they aren't necessarily things that if you do will produce a particular response, and I also want you to be removing pressure on yourself on this being something that you can do right or wrong. So the first thing that may be helpful to think about is the differentiation between information about your child's life and information about your life. So information about how this information will affect your child is very different from how it impacts you. For example, if your child asks, "Why is this happening?" you can answer with information about them and their life and their relationship with their parents, without delivering information about your relationship with their other parent. And if a child says, well, what's going to happen? Again, you can give them information about how it will impact their life, what will stay the same or what will be different, without sharing details of how it's going to change your life or how it has already changed your life. So I tend to recommend that if you want guidance, I would err on the side of giving them lots of information about their life and think cautiously before sharing details about your life or their other parent's life. The second thing that may be useful when going into this conversation is thinking about your individual child and how they generally respond well to news. There's not going to be a blueprint. Again, going back to my first point, that if anyone said that there is a perfect way to tell a child in this particular way, then you should be suspicious because you know your child best. A useful tip to think about what might work for your child is perhaps to think about how you might deliver information to them about other changes in their life. Maybe if you're moving house or they're starting nursery or starting school. Have a think back to how, when, what you might have said to your child about these changes. And we've probably all had enough examples in our child's life to know what works and what didn't work, a bit of trial and error. So have a think, with your child a type of child who wants lots of information about the new situation? Do they want to know details, and do they want to have lots of time to prepare and a run-up? Or in fact, are they a kind of child who might worry if they know that something's going to change too far in advance? And is it better then to only tell them a short amount of time ahead and maybe not fixate so much on what the changes are going to be? Another example, a slightly more light-hearted example, would be, I've got a 3-year-old at the moment, so this is particularly pertinent to preschoolers, but how would you tell your child that you're about to leave the park? And how do you? This is something that we've probably all had loads of loads of opportunities to try out different ways. Do you give them a countdown? Do you focus on what's going to be great about the next thing you're going on? Do you give them much notice, or do you sort of just introduce the idea quite soon before you're going to do it? So you'll know that's a more light-hearted example, but you'll probably already have a strategy in place for how you help your child manage transitions. So that's the second thing to be thinking about. The third one is the idea of your child knowing that this isn't their fault, that they didn't cause this and that they couldn't have prevented it. And this idea is particularly pertinent for children who are sort of anywhere under 7 years old, around that age, who will still be putting themselves at the centre of most of the stories in their life. And what I mean by that is they have a strong sense of their ability to change things around them, and they are therefore they give themselves perhaps more power than they really have. They have an idea that they have more power than they actually have, but the flip side of that is, of course, that they have a higher sense of responsibility. So have a think about in your child's life if there's ever been a moment where they have sort of drawn a line of causation between two things that really had nothing to do with them. They just sort of happened one after the other. But the child has believed that that second thing happened because of what they did first. An example from my own son is when he said to me, my friend moved away because I sprayed him with water when we were playing. And he really believed this, that was why his friend had moved away, and that's why we didn't see him. Where, of course, that wasn't why, and an adult would know that those things weren't linked. In fact, the family came round to say goodbye because they were about to move a week later. And in that course of playing, my son sprayed the other child with water. So that's an example where how children have an over-inflated sense of their ability to control their environments. And the thing that we need to be aware during a separation or parental divorce is that children may well be tempted to do this. So that, you know, when being aware of this as a parent, of course you can tell your child, you can say, this is nothing that you did to cause this, you couldn't have avoided it. But I think it's also an invitation to be aware of that going through your child's head, because children, I'm afraid, you can't tell them things with words as well as you can tell them with how they feel in a situation. And so it's an invitation to, I suppose, be on the lookout for things in their life where they might be displaying this overinflated sense of their own power and control, and just sort of keeping them on track and introducing the idea to them that these things happen. They don't need to be responsible because they actually can't control these kind of events. So those are the three things to be thinking about, hopefully in the context that I set up initially. I hope that this gives you some confidence going into this conversation, a bit of less anxiety, and I hope it goes really well.